You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at Post Office Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for the week of March 14th, 2025. It's not safe for work.
This is recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where Luke Skywalker has entered the chat. It is The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal. Hey, Blue Gal, how you doing? Anything new?
I went to sleep with a smile on my face last night. It was late. I had done my knitting podcast, which was a little emotionally draining. I have posted, by the way, my knitting podcast this week is posted at our Patreon page because it's political. And I hope you enjoy it. But it was a little bit emotionally draining as well. So one last pass at my desktop computer last night at around 9:30 at night, and I went, and Driftglass was ready to run in with,
defibrillators.
Try to defibrillate me, but he said, what? And I said, Mark Hamill has followed me back on Blue Sky. The Mark Hamill. And, that does not outshine the knitter AOC following me on Blue Sky, but it's up there.
Yeah.
And I am very happy that Mark Hamill's on board. And then you and I made a lot of jokes about,
well, let me just
how
say
you make fanboy sci-fi fans upset by.
I would say you were over the moon, but that's no moon.
That's no moon.
And I got to admit, I love Hamill's work in the Star Trek. When he fought the Gorn. I remember him fighting the Gorn. That was great.
And wasn't that the DC universe?
Yeah, the DC universe, Star Trek universe, Star Trekkers.
Luke Skywalker in Star Trek was DC, not Marvel, right?
And when he fought Alan Tudyk, pilot Wash Alan Tudyk for control of the Serendipity, I believe that was the name of the ship. It was a great show, and it only lasted one season, which is a real shame. So, I love the science fiction. As you
I thought it was Serendipity Do.
It is Serendipity Do. A little dab will do you.
A little dab will do you. So, we went off on that tangent.
Yes, we did, because it's wonderful.
Just to have fun. But yes, I was very happy. I mean, after a long day and a little emotionally draining day, to have that happen.
Yes.
Driftglass, you've got some news to share.
Not new. Well, it is news, I suppose, because this is, your official news broadcast for the liberal media. So I just didn't know if you were all aware, but now that Chuck Todd is free of the need to pretend he's not a complete tool by means of the rote recitation of the Both Sides Do It mantra every Sunday on Meet the Press, he is now venting his spleen with abandon to anyone who will listen.
Yeah.
Now, do you know how curdled and bitter Todd has become? Or at least now that he's out from behind the desk, he's allowed that face to be seen by the public. He is so curdled and bitter that he scored himself this Fox News headline. This is from March 3rd, 2025. Chuck Todd says, the mythology of Joe Biden as a family man is all bullshit. That's Chuck Todd. That's Meet the Press Chuck Todd. Quote, what he really was a craven political animal that was desperate, Chuck Todd said of the 46th president. Former NBC Meet the Press anchor Chuck Todd delivered a brutal opinion about former President Biden, calling him a craven political animal who was more concerned about his political career than his own family, unquote. But wait, Blue Gal.
I would like to put Chuck Todd in a room with Joe Biden's granddaughters and a handful of wooden spoons.
Yeah. Yeah.
I swear to God.
But there's more to this story, Blue Gal. There's more to this story.
Yes, there is. As you know, Todd quit his NBC gig earlier this year.
Yes, he did.
Ending his time there as America's most famous guy, sticking his head in the sand, and America's leading Both Sides Do It propagandist. And leaving behind this hilariously clueless headline at Entertainment Weekly. Quote, Chuck Todd exits NBC News, shares dissatisfaction with industry. The media has a lot of work to do. And I'm leaving because I don't want to do the work.
Yeah, exactly.
And here's the quote from Entertainment Weekly. Chuck Todd said, "It's a bottom line here. We can't stick our heads in the sand and we can't be propagandists." Unquote.
Yeah.
Except this story really isn't about Chuck Todd, who will always and forever be exactly who he is.
That quote, when I ran across it about him being righteous about the media, we can't stick our heads in the sand, even though I spent my entire career doing that. And we can't be propagandists, even though I spent my entire career doing that. I absolve myself of everything I did, all the shit I did, all the way I dragged this country into a toilet bowl because I wouldn't shut my fucking mouth about being both sides all the time, every time.
Yep.
What an asshole.
And not questioning every time a Republican came on my show.
No follow-up questions.
We got to move on. Yeah, right. So this isn't about Chuck Todd. This is a story about reincarnation.
That voice must belong to the man that I was.
I didn't know what I was saying.
I must be the man playing tennis in those dreams, driving that car, swimming in that lake.
Now you're telling me you've been reincarnated.
Right.
Take it from me. When you're dead, you're dead.
Suppose you knew who you had been in a previous life.
What is this, some kind of a joke or something? You've signed the name of the deceased.
Spooky, scary.
Mm-hmm.
The story is about where in the world did Fox News come by these juicy quotes from Chuck Todd so they could run an even the liberal former host of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd, agrees with shitting all over Joe Biden. Blah, 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 blah.
Terrible man, awful man, hates his family.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To answer that question, here's the next sentence of that Fox News feature.
Buckle up, folks. Quote, during an appearance Sunday on Lincoln Project co-founder Steve Schmidt's The Warning podcast, Todd delved into why the Democrats lost the 2024 election and what he perceives as the media's relationship with the second Trump administration. Unquote. That's right, boys and girls. Steve Schmidt. He went on Steve Schmidt's show to shit all over Joe Biden. So Todd uses Steve Schmidt to take cheap shots at Biden and scored both of them a feature at Fox News. But wait, there's more. Remember about 5 minutes ago when CNN sort of fired and sort of sidelined Jim Acosta because he was one of those few people who actually questioned Donald Trump vigorously? And all of us good liberals ran to his Substack to follow him because of that, because we're all good liberals and we follow that because Jim Acosta did a good thing. Well, other than filling up my inbox with stuff I already know and interviews with people I don't care about, I haven't given Mr. Acosta much thought until this week when his guest was Steve Schmidt. Steve Schmidt is showing up in all the right places for Steve Schmidt to make a comeback in the media. You know why? Because the Legacy Media Insider Club is a house of many doors, Blue Gal. And not just doors, but many windows and many chimneys down which you can shimmy, and many little adjacent bungalows where marginal club members can live and work until they're fully rehabilitated. See, you and I, Blue Gal, aren't in the club, and we never shall be because we're not in the club, which seems like a tautology, right? You know, a thing that explains itself. But it's the straight dope, I assure you. To be in the club, you have to have already been in the club. And although his membership card is torn and tarnished and dirty and covered with shit, and he's burned it 3 or 4 times, I shall never again doubt that Steve Schmidt is in the fucking club. So, when given a chance to absorb some of Jim Acosta's rapidly fading good guy ally glow, no surprise, Schmidt snapped it up. No one should be surprised that rehabilitation of Steve Schmidt is once again well underway, as it has happened. I've documented on my blog like repeatedly over the course of years the number of times Schmidt has burned down his reputation, destroyed his own podcast, and then brought back to life on MSNBC of all places, repeatedly because of his friend Nicole Wallace. Because like road work on the Dan Ryan Expressway, you Chicagoans will understand this, the media's reinvention and rehabilitation project for members of the club never really stops. It goes on all year round, forever.
And since Driftglass told me this morning about what he wanted this show to be about, I've been asking myself the question, why? Why do these people who have left jobs where they were making 7 figures and clearly have 7 figures in the bank,
right?
At least $1 million in the bank. if I had $1 million in the bank, I would not be looking for a microphone, right? No. Not that I don't love all of our listeners, but
No.
Megyn Kelly's $26 million, I'd be gone. Goodbye.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering why. Why are all these people still wanting the microphone, still wanting attention? Like you've won and you now can retire comfortably. And so you might wonder, why are these people working so hard to find a microphone anywhere? And it came to us as we were talking that just be aware that this year, 2025, is the beauty contest season for the 2028 presidential election. Mm-hmm. And certainly of the midterms, but it's really ramping up for 2028. I mean, today, the news is that Pete Buttigieg is not running for the Senate in Michigan in 2026, which means he's running for president in 2028. And so the horse race this is a beauty contest. The horse beauty contest is happening, and Steve Schmidt's looking for a job, not on a podcast,
right,
but with a presidential campaign.
Where the money is. Yep.
For the money. And for access to power.
Right.
And Chuck Todd wants to be a White House correspondent for somebody because he loves that vibe. Mm-hmm. And Steve Schmidt wants to run whichever horse will pay him the most.
Howard Schultz.
Yeah, well, he was willing to take Howard Schultz's money. Yes, right. He was. Mm-hmm. And so it's essential that Steve Schmidt is on everyone's radar now so that he can advise a centrist right Democratic presidential candidate in, now everybody take a breath now, less than 18 months.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're going to be announcing in less than 18 months that they're running for president.
Yep.
And it's essential that Chuck Todd and Jim Acosta and Steve Bannon be legitimately on the air. So when Joe Average starts paying attention to politics again, they've always been there. They're a well-established show. Mm-hmm. And there seems to be an awful lot of them, from pundits, out-of-work political hatchet men, local radio guys, candidates sniffing around at higher office. Everybody is drifting in the same direction and trying to position themselves.
Yeah.
And some of them are doing a good job. J.B. Pritzker's doing a good job. And
Tim Walz.
Tim Walz is doing a good job.
Yeah.
And so, and then you've got the governor of California, who I don't know what the hell he's doing. Mm-hmm. But I have a feeling Steve Schmidt has been talking to him.
Well, and you gotta remember, and this is a little bit arrogant of us, but Tim Walz and J.B. Pritzker are from the Midwest.
Yeah.
They understand what these people are like. They actually live in universes where there's lots of Republicans who have a lot of influence and a lot of local media clout and a lot of power and a lot of say. This is the place where coastal media comes to try to figure out what the fuck is going on with MAGA people. Yeah. These guys live with these people. They're among them. Newsom is not. I mean, however good a job he might be doing for California.
No, but California is media, and he's doing media stuff.
But he apparently does not have a fucking clue about MAGA, who they are, what they are, what they really are. So he's inviting the elite ones to come play with him. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
And if I may just interject for a moment, Tim Walz speaking at a school about the education department, we're going to get into more of what he said, but when he said, these teachers don't want to be political, they just want to teach your kids.
Yeah.
He is reaching right out to Joe Average and saying, it's okay for you not to care about politics. Well, he knows how to communicate this.
Walz and Pritzker are running, as we say on this show, as goddamn Democrats.
Goddamn Democrats. Yep.
Everybody else appears to be drifting in a very specific direction. And
and can you guess what that direction might be, Driftglass?
I have a notion.
Here's a clue. I've got a clue for you. Now, we talked about this on Tuesday. Local radio veteran Sean, and Sean has thoughts about fearless Democratic street fighter Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas, who we consider a goddess.
Yeah.
She is a rock star of the Democratic Party, right?
Yep. More of her, more like her.
And she said, fuck Donald Trump.
Right. That's right.
Which, I've started a knit along. We're all knitting fuck Donald Trump hats, by the way. You should go look at my knitting podcast from this week. Okay, but let's get back. This is Sean, who is, Illinois, Southern Illinois radio guy. He said, quote, "This is a strategy conversation, not a place for who you agree with politically. The Dems went to a social media influencer. They don't need F-bombs. That's not going to land you the apolitical Joe Rogan crowd. Cute video game-like videos won't either. You need people who can get the middle back from people who weren't excited about voting for Trump. They have to do something different, but that's not the way."
That's not the way.
Unquote.
That's not the way.
Now, how stupid or drunk do you have to be to write a sentence or speak a sentence that includes the phrase, "That's not going to land you the apolitical Joe Rogan crowd"? This is from The Independent. Quote, "Joe Rogan now realizes voting works, but only because Trump won. Joe Rogan elevated an election integrity conspiracy theory while celebrating Donald Trump's presidential win, suggesting if the former president had not won the election, it may have been rigged. So it turns out voting works. It's real," Rogan said with delight on Thursday's episode of the Joe Rogan Experience. His comment came hours after the Associated Press called the 2024 presidential election for Trump, who had been lagging narrowly behind Vice President Kamala Harris in most national polls. "As much as we fucking thought they had it rigged, as much as we thought there was shenanigans and bullshit, and it's just a puppet show and there's no way anybody can buck the system, turns out voting is still real," Rogan said. Rogan accused the media of gaslighting the public into believing Harris would win the election with preliminary polling numbers and accusations that Trump is dangerous. Later on in the podcast, Rogan theorized that something was skeptical about the 2020 election because it seemingly had higher voter turnout. COVID, duh, you asshole. Specifically in favor of Biden than previous elections, including 2024, unquote.
Yeah, the thing about Sean, he appears to be confusing stupid with apolitical.
Yeah.
Dumb fucking MAGA people with people who just don't have an opinion at all and have never formed an opinion and listen to Joe Rogan for some other reason because they don't like the F-bombs, even though, look, there's Joe Rogan F-bombing right, left, and center.
Yes.
And this is from CNN. This is from earlier. This is from the endorsement day, but it does include some more choice information about Mr. Rogan's apolitical audience and his apolitical nature. Joe Rogan endorses Trump on eve of the election. Quote, "Popular podcast host Joe Rogan officially endorsed Donald Trump on the eve of the election, a move Trump team swiftly touted as a major win in the final hours of their campaign. Rogan on Monday released his latest podcast featuring a 2.5-hour interview with billionaire ex-owner and top Trump surrogate Elon Musk. Rogan then posted on X, "The great and powerful Elon Musk, if it wasn't for him, we'd be fucked. He makes what I think is the most compelling case for Trump you'll hear, and I agree with him every step of the way. For the record, yes, that's an endorsement of Trump. Enjoy the podcast," he added, unquote. So,
gosh, that Jasmine Crockett should stop picking up her F-bombs from Joe Rogan.
She's hanging out with a potty mouth, you gal.
I don't think so.
So if saying that Joe Rogan's listeners are apolitical was the setup, this was the punchline. You need people who can get the middle back.
Yeah.
Now, consider now that the MSNBC bulwark axis has completed the rehabilitation of Michael Steele. And after MSNBC's race purge, given him 1/3 of his own weekday show. Very exciting. Steele is now firmly a member in good standing of that inner circle of recently former Republicans who will control the direction of the last little corner of the liberal media on cable TV. And in his ad for his own podcast, Steele gives us a hint of who he thinks the liberal media should be leaning towards. This is his own ad that he reads himself. Quote, "I'm the host of the podcast. Each week I'm having conversations with political analysts, writers, and activists who aren't afraid to shake things up. A little bit like yours truly. You want to shake things up, Michael? Invite us on your show. That'll shake things up." Now, here's the money quote. It doesn't matter if you're on the left, the right, or somewhere in the strong middle. This is the place you want to be in, or space you want to be in, quote, unquote.
Consider that on PBS's Amanpour and Company, Hari Srinivasan interviewed, quote, NYU professor, entrepreneur, and podcast host Scott Galloway, unquote. And hat tip alert listener Andy for this, because practically the first words out of Galloway's mouth were, quote, Democrats are just as guilty of this as Republicans, are in favor of an autocrat as long as that autocrat shares their views.
Yeah.
Did you get that?
That's why we nominated Hillary Clinton, and then Joe Biden, and then Kamala Harris. Before that, Barack Obama.
Because we loved autocrats that just agree with us.
We want a dictator.
Galloway hosts a podcast called Raging Moderates. Who listens to this shit, Dripless?
Oh, lots of people do. Lots of people, I'm sure.
So no big surprise that he'd want to both sides the Republican Party slide into fascism and make it Democrats are just as bad.
Well, I have a feeling the people that do listen to people who say both sides do it, both sides are bad, are the people we all know, the Republicans who don't want to believe that they're uniquely evil or bad. Yeah. That there's no reason.
They also read the New York Times every day and think they're well informed.
Yeah.
Right.
But they want to believe that since both sides are equally bad, me voting for a tyrant, a corrupt scumbag, isn't bad because the other side is as bad or worse. So it's morally neutral to vote for the fascists. And that's what both-siderism does. It gives them a permission
system. It's a permission system. Yeah.
Now, as you know, both Governor Gavin Newsom and former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel, and if you want to read a lot about Rahm Emanuel, go to my blog. I wrote an awful lot.
He's done eons.
I did Mayor Rahm and the rules of politics according to Mayor Rahm. And I had a good time doing that because he was a real bad mayor. Both of those guys aspired to a higher office, so they have each decided that beating up on trans kids will help them reach that imaginary middle. Now, Newsom, as you probably already know, has decided to go all in with the both-siderism by inviting MAGA ghouls and hobgoblins like Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk to share a microphone with him on Newsom's podcast. And this is a headline from a couple of days ago of the ABC News Bay Area headline, quote, Newsom finds common ground with influential MAGA voices in podcast, unquote. And smack in the middle of all of this is the fact that MSNBC, and MSNBC is that last little corner of liberal cable news programming, MSNBC is dying. Now, the truth of the matter is cable news as a whole is dying, but MSNBC sure as hell is leading the race to the cemetery. This is from The Independent, December 18th, 2024. Quote, more bad news for MSNBC as they hemorrhage viewers and are now losing to News Nation in weekend ratings battles.
That is a 5-alarm fire for that network.
It's a garbage repurposed WGN network thing that puts on Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a shit show, and it is that kind of, I don't know. I heard somebody call it like the Nick at Night of news programs.
Of news shows, It's
just bullshit. Anyway, continuing with, quote, amid plummeting ratings since Donald Trump's election last month, several of the liberal cable news network's programs on Saturday finished behind the centrist, read garbage, news upstart in the key 25 to 54 demographic, unquote. And we're so sorry to do this. We have to now quote from the New York Post. February 26, 2025, quote, Fox and Friends extends ratings lead as MSNBC's Morning Joe loses nearly half its audience since the election, unquote.
And it's not because people move from Morning Joe to Fox and Friends.
No.
It's because people watching Morning Joe checked out.
Right.
Because Morning Joe, well, I'm gonna tell you more about that. They don't look. MSNBC doesn't want to lose whatever's left of their liberal audience, but they also refuse to sack Joe Alago. Joe Alago Scarborough and Morning Mika, his menagerie of frat buddy hacks that he has on to agree with him and tell him he's great. And Joe Scarborough is my reason why I'm staying away.
Yeah.
That's why I won't watch Lawrence, because that's paying Joe Scarborough's salary. And I really do think Joe Scarborough is calling a lot of the shots with the suits upstairs at MSNBC because he's a loudmouth who thinks he runs everything.
Yeah, and they really believe they cannot get rid of him. That he just can't, it's impossible to get rid of him.
He's got pictures of dead hookers somewhere. I don't know. So they very much need to attract replacement viewers so that their ad rates don't drop to the point where only dick pill and prepper survival pack purveyors are willing to spend actual money on advertising on MSNBC. And remember, these suits upstairs, shareholder value is their only value.
Exactly.
And if they have to go back to 6 hours of lockup in the evenings, they'll do it.
Yeah,
they will do it.
That's kind of what the future looks like.
Yeah. But the chances of attracting MAGA Republican viewers are slim to none. I mean, Fox has to worry about that because if you're not pro-Trump enough, they'll leave and go to Newsmax.
Right.
Or OAN or whatever. Now they have alternatives. But unless they pull a Newsom and start stunt casting MAGA mopes like Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens, and if you think that that's too far for MSNBC to go, don't forget that they hired Hugh Hewitt.
They sure as hell did. They
Yep.
gave him his own show. They gave him his own show on the weekends. They sure as hell did.
And that will definitely drive away more liberal viewers because if someone needs to watch that kind of train wreck, they can watch it on crooksandliars.com or Media Matters, where, those of us who have to wallow in this stuff and clip it, we'll be glad to show you just how bad it is.
This is not a paid endorsement of crooksandliars.com.
Yes, it is.
Yes,
it's an unpaid
Absolutely.
endorsement of Crooks and Liars, I promise you. So sooner or later, the cable news shot callers will once again begin listening to the siren song of the same old snake oil salesman peddling the same old nonsense about there being this vast and underserved audience, Drift Class, of politically active and aware centrists desperate for news coverage.
Out there.
It's out there. It's out there, Drift Class, just over the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
You know what the aware centrist is watching, Drift Class? They're watching Masked Singer.
Yeah. Yeah, the reason...
That's what they're watching, Married at First Sight, The Bachelor. They're watching, The Golden Bachelor. They're watching reality TV. They don't care. Being told by the same old frauds that if they just had the courage to load their lineups with Third Way, No Labels, Country Over Party, Purple Project, Forward Party talking heads. And that's where there's always money in the banana shack for those.
Yeah, there's always
things.
always a ton of money for those people.
There's
and for
always a seat at Morning Joe for that bullshit too.
To whisper in the ear of the dying legacy media that Democrats just need to become more like Republicans. That's the secret.
And that's what they're all telling each other at the golf club.
Mm-hmm.
If they could put on the best show this hick town has ever seen and save the family farm to boot.
Listen, are you kids willing to stick together and pull yourselves out of a hole? You bet. I've got an idea. I'm going to write a show for us and put it on right here in Seaport. We'll get every kid in this town on our side, and we'll start right now. What do you say? Right? Come on, kids, let's go!
And sadly, it's pretty clear that that's where MSNBC and all the others who want to worship at the altar of both-siderism are headed.
Yeah.
And it is for circumstances such as these that in the early 1600s, a writer named M. Day coined the expression a fool's errand, because there's nothing out there to save you in the empty void called centrism. Mm-hmm. It's just a bunch of Republicans who don't want to admit that they're voting for fascists. So it's going to be 2004 all over again. And if you weren't there for it, well, for a while, that's going to be just like 2004. Now, you remember 2004, right? A lot of our older listeners, a lot of our more veteran folks remember 2004, right? 2004 was when a corrupt and incompetent Republican administration was shredding the Constitution and lying to the American public constantly and ruling by fear and sanctioning torture and spying on American citizens without a warrant. Right, Blue Gal?
Yep. Oh, yeah, I remember. They trashed protesters as traitors, trashed longtime allies when those allies didn't go along with the lies, exploded the deficit so they could give tax cuts to billionaires, turned their rabid supporters loose on anyone who said a word against them, and looted the treasury to make their cronies rich.
Absolutely. And remember, they had this plan, Blue Gal, this George Bush plan that he didn't ever mention during the re-election much, but it was to gut Social Security.
It was to privatize Social Security and give it to Wall Street. Yeah.
Put it in the stock market. Let stock market handle Social Security. That was the plan, to get rid of Social Security.
Remember that most of the legacy media just rolled over for George W. Bush. It was open season. on liberals, on America-hating, terrorist-loving liberals in the conservative media, even the so-called respectable conservative media like the Wall Street Journal.
Well, if you want to read some amazing shit, it's still around somewhere way out. The publication is gone. But the stuff that reasonable, respectable, noble David Brooks was writing about liberals in 2003 and 2004 is some of the most vicious trash that it's Ben Shapiro level stuff.
Yeah.
And it was perfectly okay. Perfectly okay. Nobody ever got punished for kicking liberals during the Bush administration. Right. Nobody ever lost their job over doing that. And nobody ever lost.
But no one held the line against the Bush administration except a few loud voices in the liberal blogosphere. That was it.
That was it. A few loud voices in Congress and a few loud voices in the liberal blogosphere. Mm-hmm. And remember that eventually, Blue Gal, reality kicked in. We believe in reality here, and it all fell apart. And all those crooks and thugs and scumbags and liars who had gone along for the ride scattered like cockroaches when the lights go on. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, it's going to be like that or worse for a while. And all I can say is we've been through something similar to this, not as bad as this, but we're familiar with the contours of this kind of behavior.
And the trajectory.
And we have faith, ultimately, that you can't defy gravity, that eventually reality will catch up with you. And that's the point at which the people who keep the fires burning now will be needed more than ever.
And you just know that J.D. Vance will have a seat at Fox News in 20 years.
Sure.
Where he can be the Karl Rove. Karl Rove, who should be in jail.
Absolutely. Yep.
Is the reasonable guy with a whiteboard on Fox. Because conservatives have a tremendous gift for forgiving and forgetting, and especially forgetting.
Yeah.
All right, let's do a news roundup, Drift Glass.
All right, after you.
This is a really interesting story. This is from Reuters, Parkersburg, West Virginia. It looks like it's just another FAFO. Fucked around and found out, but give this a listen. Jennifer Piggott proudly hung a red and blue Trump campaign flag outside her one-story home during the November election race. Now, after she was abruptly fired from her civil service job, her days of supporting the president are over. Piggott is among more than 125 people dismissed in February from the Treasury Department's Bureau of Fiscal Service in Parkersburg, West Virginia, unsettling a community that voted overwhelmingly for Republican President Donald Trump because leopards were never going to eat their face, right? Exactly. Nobody that I've talked to understood the devastation that having this administration in office would do to our lives. Piggott, 47, told Reuters in an interview, saying she would not have supported Trump if she knew what she knows now. So would she have voted for Kamala Harris, Drift Glass?
Would she have voted for the black woman? Oh, fuck no. Oh, fuck. No. No, she'd rather...
This is imaginary erasure.
Right.
Of what you would have done. Yeah.
I'd rather go back to coal mining than doing that. Yep.
As much as I think that President Trump is doing wonderful things for the country in some regards, I don't understand this at all.
Yeah,
she said.
You were supposed to hurt other people. You weren't supposed to hurt me.
Right. He was going to do wonderful things for the country elsewhere. Piggott worked at BFS for 5 years and had recently been promoted. That promotion made her a target as Trump administration began firing thousands of probationary federal workers, a group that includes new hires, but also includes workers moving from one internal position to another. So if you got promoted for doing a good job, you had a target on your back as far as Elon Musk was concerned, right?
Yep.
Back to the article. The renunciation of allegiance to Trump by Piggott, a church-going conservative and 3-time Trump voter, comes as political analysts are parsing early signs of a possible backlash in Republican strongholds where the government-slashing efforts of the president and his cost-cutting czar Elon Musk are beginning to be felt. Now, okay, that's a FAFO story. But I went and did a little research because I wanted to find out about this government office in West Virginia.
Yeah.
And this office was established there by Dwight David Eisenhower. And I found an article about it when they were celebrating their 50th anniversary in Parkersburg, West Virginia in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
Here's from the article, quote, "The Bureau of Public Debt first identified Parkersburg, West Virginia as its emergency relocation site in the early 1950s during the Cold War era. They wanted to hide data from the Ruskies."
Yeah, if bombs started flying, you could go there.
You could, right. If bombs hit Washington, D.C., the data would be hidden in Parkersburg, West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
By 1957, Public Debt, the department, started to set up some of its savings bond operations there as well. This included installing one of the earliest commercially available mainframe computers. It would be used to introduce electronic processing to the enormous and growing volumes of U.S. savings bond records. Besides seeking an emergency relocation site, Public Debt also recognized the availability of a talented, competitive workforce in Parkersburg. In the decades that followed, Parkersburg continued to be Public Debt's obvious choice for long-term success, as decisions were made about where to consolidate work to gain efficiencies or provide outstanding customer service. Throughout the years, Public Debt's changing needs created a demand for new occupations in Parkersburg, West Virginia. The current workforce includes specially trained customer service representatives, excellent accountants, technology experts, meticulous financing personnel, and talented staff members who support all our administrative operations. The workforce is so strong that we competitively offer administrative and technology services to other federal agencies. These are white-collar jobs for white women.
Yep.
While their husbands go off and work in the coal mines or work in industry or whatever they were doing back in the 50s to the 70s. And it's women like Piggott, who is a church-going conservative woman
mm-hmm.
who has a good, clean, white-collar job that she can go to an office and be a customer service rep, right?
Well, or more. I mean, I don't know what her job is. Maybe
right.
she's a tech expert.
Maybe she's a computer programmer. You don't know.
But
right. But these are white-collar jobs.
And it's also...
And they have good retirement benefits and
yep.
good health benefits. And
exactly.
they provide a focal hiring job center for that community.
And they are, since they were established by the last decent Republican president, Dwight Eisenhower, they represent a corporate memory,
mm-hmm.
a depth of expertise that you only acquire after years and years and years mm-hmm. of reputation and training and growing and passing knowledge along to the next generation and the next. And you can't train that. You can't replicate that. Once you destroy that, it's gone. It's brain work. It's expertise. It's knowing that this thing worked 20 years ago, or here's why this thing came to be. And this is why we don't push this button over here on a Tuesday, or everything will blow up. And Musk's people, and this is happening all across the country. There are little places like this in towns like this full of experts on this and that they're just mm-hmm. gutting. And all those people who know how to make shit work for their community and for the country and who are so expert they can farm out their expertise to other departments are getting gutted by a bunch of 20-year-olds who have no fucking idea how anything works. They have no
idea how anything works. And I was noticing this when I looked this up, Parkersburg, West Virginia. I was remembering you and I file quarterly taxes because the Professional Podcast is a business. We have to mail a form to the IRS every 3 months, right?
That's right.
Where do we mail it, Driftglass? You don't know because you don't do it. I mail it.
I'm in the trailer polishing my nails for this show.
Right. He's polishing his nails. I'm mailing the tax forms. Okay. There are 4 places that you mail these tax forms, depending on what state you're in and whether you're mailing with a payment or without a payment. Those 4 places are not Washington, D.C., Washington, D.C., Washington, D.C. Those places are Kansas City, Missouri, Cincinnati, Ohio, Louisville, Kentucky, and Ogden, Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Those are places where they have moved white-collar jobs for people to open tax forms and process them. Mm-hmm. The federal and hire vets.
Yes, exactly.
And hire people who need jobs, good jobs, and they need good jobs in those communities. You and I have quoted before Nixon, talking about, well, if the economy's on a teetering on the edge of some certain place, we'll just build a dam.
Build a dam, build roads, build bridges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we can create jobs. The
Yes,
federal government can create jobs.
And that's a good thing because
It's a good thing.
Those jobs are held by people who use that money to buy things from other people.
Yes.
And they create
and make the economy grow.
And they make necessary infrastructure that actually produces more value than their labor was worth.
And if you don't have that, then they don't start a family and they don't grow the economy and they don't have a happy life.
Mm-hmm. All right. This is from the Associated Press. And these are the bad Republicans. These are the people that Dwight Eisenhower would have invaded Europe to defeat rather than elect the fucking House and Senate and the White House. The House passed a Republican spending bill to fund the government through September and avoid a shutdown. I'm glad they said pass a Republican spending bill. It passed 217 to 213. The measure keeps spending mostly flat, but it increases military funding by $6 billion, while cutting $3 billion from non-defense programs, including a $1 billion reduction to Washington, D.C.'s city budget, which is basically signing the death warrant for schools and hospitals and public services in the nation's capital, because those people are fucking scum. And they hate the fact that Washington, D.C. is outside of that little loop around there, is basically a brown city full of brown people who they despise with every fiber of their being. House Republicans largely supported the bill after pressure from Trump and J.D. Vance, arguing it gives the administration flexibility to reshape federal spending through Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. Let me translate that for you. This will codify Elon Musk and his chainsaw-wielding incels to do whatever the fuck they want with no transparency whatsoever, wherever they want. So at this point, it doesn't matter if they pass this, what budget Congress passes, because Elon Musk will just waltz in and take it all away, which is currently illegal, highly illegal. But if they pass this bill and just say, we authorize Elon Musk to do the shit that he's been doing, well then, kiss it all goodbye. Speaker Mike Johnson, of course, compared the passage of the funding bill to the Super Bowl, saying, I'm surprised he didn't say the second coming of Jesus, saying, this is the moment we've all been waiting for our entire careers, and finally the stars have aligned, unquote.
From the New York fucking Times today, quote, as markets whipsaw, conservative media shrugs. Many conservative websites have either ignored the recent stock declines or framed them in a positive way. Yep. On his very stupid show, Gutfeld, very stupid Greg Gutfeld said, a tariff is not a tax if you don't buy the goods.
Jesus Christ.
That's great news for auto manufacturers, but isn't it, Greg? But never mind. Greg also said that DEI causes inflation.
Yeah.
And this is where Fox viewers go for economic giggles.
If you want to know why Miss Piggott voted for Trump 3 times, this is why.
This is why.
This is why.
Yep.
This story comes from many different sources, but this one is, I believe, straight from the Wall Street Journal, but it's the same story a lot of folks are carrying. It's about tariffs. It's a little bit long, but it's worth paying attention. Trump imposed 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports, claiming they would protect American industry, but triggering global backlash. Duh. Canada and the EU responded with retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods, including metals, whiskey, and motorcycles, while China imposed levies on agricultural and energy products. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen dismissed Trump's trade war, saying tariffs are taxes. They're bad for business and even worse for consumers. And really, you don't need to say much more about them because all of that is the blunt truth. Nevertheless, Trump doubled down, threatening reciprocal tariffs on April 2nd, but quickly backed off his plans to raise Canadian metal tariffs to 50%, after Ontario withdrew an electricity surcharge. Canadian Finance Minister Dominique LeBlanc criticized the White House action, saying the U.S. administration is once again inserting disruption and disorder into an incredibly successful trading partnership. Trump, however, remained defiant and insisted, of course, I'm going to respond. Trump's administration claims tariffs will boost domestic manufacturing, despite economists warning they'll raise consumer prices, disrupt supply chains, and provoke a trade war. Incoming Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney vowed continued resistance, saying, my government will keep our tariffs on until the Americans show us respect and make credible reliable commitments to free and fair trade. You'll honor your contracts. When we have a deal, it's a deal. And this asshole won't renege on everything and decide to bomb everyone because he had a bad dream or he can't take a shit straight.
The education department laid off over 1,300 employees, nearly half its workforce, as Trump pushes to dismantle the agency. Education Secretary Linda McMahon, which I can barely say, because isn't she the wrestling lady?
Yes, she is.
Said the reductions aim to eliminate bureaucratic bloat and turn over the agency's authority to states. Trump campaigned on closing the department, calling it a hub of radicals, zealots, and Marxists. I also want to interject. We are aware that a federal judge in San Francisco is reversing some of these firings. Mm-hmm. It's hard to believe anything anymore, and it's certainly a question as to whether Donald Trump is going to obey the courts and whether Republicans in Congress are just going to let him.
Yeah.
Whether the Supreme Court's going to let him.
And, we've been doing news updates now for 15 years, 14 years, a long, long time. And it is hard to do, not because there's not tons of news, but because the Republicans flick the switch off and on so goddamn fast.
Right. Especially tariffs now. It's like one day to the next, it's a different story.
Well, and one day it was, we're cutting all the phone lines to Social Security offices, so fuck y'all. The next day it was like, oh, no, I guess we're not going to do that.
Right.
And, it used to be when the president of the United States or leader of administration said anything, they chose their words so carefully because one wrong thing, one Ronald Reagan joke about bombing Russia could cause global catastrophe, spiral things out of control. These people just pulling shit out of their ass, tossing in the air, and reversing themselves the next day, which is a reflection of the media they have been eating for 30 years. Which is, we say one thing one day, one thing the next, and then we reverse ourselves, then we change our mind, then we lie about it. That's what they do all the time.
That's what Hannity does every day. Yeah.
So we got news.
And let's not forget that Donald Trump is in severe cognitive decline.
Yep.
And that's obvious to anyone with eyes. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. That is starting to leak out, though. I saw something in Politico today that was about Donald Trump's fixation about Canada as the 51st state. And they used the word fixation and they used the word cognitive decline. And they quoted psychologists saying, somebody that keeps saying something crazy like that over and over again, 80-something years old, we kind of think something's wrong.
I was about to drop, speaking of just things going off and on too quickly to follow, like virtual particles. They pop into existence and they're gone.
Right.
I saw on my phone an alert saying, the Trump is cutting school lunch programs in Illinois. Yeah. Billions of dollars from Illinois programs, or millions of dollars, are going to affect thousands of students. And I go to my beautiful wife and say, well, we should really include this in our podcast. And my wife said, nope, they undid it. They walked it back, or they said
going
no,
to, or
whatever. So
JB Pritzker's going to sue, and that's part of fascist dictatorships, right?
Chaos, keeping everything in chaos.
Like us to not be able to trust our own eyes and ears.
Well, I trust my own eyes and ears, but to make chaos on purpose.
Right.
To make it so you can't figure out what's going on because one day it's one thing, the next day it's the opposite, the third day they deny it ever happened.
Yep.
But speaking of Education Secretary Linda McMahon, Tim Walz had this to say about her not knowing what the IDEA is. Quote, the idea that the Secretary of Education would not know what IDEA is, the Individuals with Disability in Education Act. That's like your mechanic not knowing how to put air in your tire. And she's in charge of this nation's educational progress. It is catastrophic, unquote. Yep. Way to go, Tim.
And one good thing that's coming out of these kind of things, these attacks on education, this affects the daily lives of school children.
Which is bad.
It's very bad, but it radicalizes them.
It does. And their parents. And
I brought this up before many years ago, and I want to say it again. When middle child was in high school and middle school, she participated in Scholastic Bowl, which was competition on what you know and what you don't know. One of the topics was, this was first Trump administration. one of the topics was the cabinet. And the kids were getting the questions wrong and the questions wrong and getting answers wrong. When we got to Betsy DeVos, every goddamn kid in that room knew who Betsy DeVos was. Every single one of them.
Yep.
Because she was a menace.
And you know what? Yeah. All those kids are now in their early 20s.
They're all 21 and voting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they ain't voting for Trump.
Nope.
None of Middle Child's friends vote for Trump.
No. Some of them grit their teeth and vote for the Democrat. Because
you had a conversation with Middle Child about John Anderson and Ronald Reagan.
I did. Back when dinosaurs roamed the earth. And when I was in my 20s and I knew everything and I was too pure to vote for Jimmy Carter.
Well,
but Reagan was nuts, so I threw my vote to John Anderson. And
Middle Child, to her credit, cares very much about people, human beings who live in Gaza. She cares about them.
She does. Really, really does. And
does.
And is heartbroken that nobody will come out with the position that is optimal. That's the best. Yeah. That's the most clean.
And no one has enough humanity to treat victims of brutality like human beings. That's more. It's just a flat out. I'm looking at what's happening to humanity, and I'm upset about it. Yep. That's the 21-year-old's attitude. Yeah,
and we really, really want to encourage that level of attachment to other people's humanity.
Yeah,
that is where the best impulses come from.
Yeah,
and I was not lecturing. I was just saying, believe me, I understand. I was young once. I had beautiful, long, flowing hair. And at the time, I really did think in my heart of hearts that I was doing the right thing by not lowering myself to voting, to choosing between two bad choices. And I thought, well, they're pretty much equally bad, right, Blue Gal? Both sides, both sides. That's how deep it goes. And I'm hoping simply that other people will profit by my stupidity, my youthful indiscretion, if you will. And it never really works out. But I got to say, when talking politics with these kids, I am just overjoyed by the level of engagement they have, the level of knowledge they have, the level of commitment they have to making the world a better place.
Absolutely.
And I have nothing. I was certainly not that aware when I was their age. They're so much better than I was in every way at that age. So,
and if I can just throw a little hint to Gavin Newsom and Rahm Emanuel, do not kick trans kids under the bus.
Don't do it, man. Don't
do it. I'm telling you.
I tell you what.
You want the youth vote to just go away?
Here's my suggestion. Listen to Blue Gal and don't kick trans kids under the bus. Second, if you want to know what MAGA people think and are like, don't invite Charlie Kirk on your show. Invite Miss Pigott, who just lost her job, and ask her questions like, so you voted for Trump 3 times, but all this came as a surprise to you. Why do you suppose it came as a surprise to you? Where do you get your news from? What do you read? What's the last book you read? Was it The Secret? Was it a murder mystery? What newspapers do you read? And don't be hostile. Don't be angry. No. But really, she is MAGA.
Yeah.
She's not a spokesperson trying to use these people to gain power. She is the person who's doing these things, who's casting those votes. So talk to her. I think that'll be a very fruitful conversation.
And Driftglass, I genuinely tried to watch the debate circle that Sam Sater did this week, where he was surrounded by MAGA youth.
I watched 1 minute of it.
Segment of it. Yeah. It's hard to watch because the level of stupid with these kids.
It's like playing speed chess against hamsters.
It is.
Just walking around the room going, wrong, here's why you're wrong, here's why you're wrong, here's why. And it was exhausting.
And DEI, the government agencies do DEI for the tax cuts.
Right.
And Sam Sater having to explain to an American person that government agencies do not get tax cuts for hiring black people.
They're funded by tax dollars. They do not pay taxes for whatever reason.
DEI is not quotas.
And that young man saying, yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
And you just want to reach into that kid's head and just take out
the brain and replace it.
Take out whatever garbage has been. And I don't just want to take out the garbage. I want to find out where that garbage came from and go whip the crap out of that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that kid didn't grow up being that stupid and wrong.
No.
He had to be raised to be stupid and wrong.
Right.
Anyway.
It was embarrassing.
It was.
So in the really stupidest stunt of the week, Trump bought an $80,000 Tesla to support Elon Musk, falsely claiming that boycotts against Tesla are illegal. Anything Trump doesn't like is illegal. That's the fascist rule, right?
Is illegal, yeah. Well, protests are illegal. By the way, any attacks, anything that goes on at a Tesla dealership, he once treated like domestic terrorism.
Domestic terrorism, but January 6th wasn't domestic terrorism.
No,
right?
that was a heroic act.
Donald Trump staged a car commercial for his largest donor on government property. And I did love the Blue Sky post that said, "How did those explosive devices get past White House security?" But he did a car commercial for his largest donor on government property, after which he received a $100 million, let's just call it a bribe.
Yep. Right out in the open.
The most corrupt president in American history. It is the corruption, stupid. Mm-hmm. It is the corruption.
This is from CNN. As the Office of Personnel Management oversaw the layoffs of thousands of federal workers and pressed others to justify their positions, this has got to be my favorite story of the week. The agency's chief spokesperson repeatedly used her office for a side hustle as an aspiring Instagram fashion influencer. Oh, joy. In at least a dozen videos filmed in her OPM office, political appointee McLaurin Pinover, if that truly is her name.
McLaurin
Pinover.
Which is like an SNL skit where it's a mouthwash and a toilet bowl cleaner. McLaurin.
Yeah. Or the worst stripper at the worst strip club you've ever visited in the dead of February. She modeled her outfit choices of the day, which, while directing followers from her Instagram account to a website that could earn her commissions on clothing sales.
And she didn't think there was anything wrong with this.
No, because stupid criminals never do. Ugh. What do you mean I can't take it? It was sitting right there. On the same day, OPM sent a government-wide memo pressing federal officials to identify barriers they faced in their work to swiftly terminate poor-performing employees. Pinover posted a video blowing a kiss to the camera with the caption, "Work look," and the hashtag DCInfluencer. Her Instagram account linked to a site where viewers could buy the $475 purple skirt she wore in the video.
$475 for a purple skirt?
Yep.
And she's in the Office of Personnel Management.
Yep. And honestly, when being a public servant is your side hustle, which is true right down the line. Donald Trump running things is just what he has to do between playing golf and raking in bribes. And he doesn't give a shit about anything else.
And raking in bribes at Mar-a-Lago. Yeah. Yep. Cash Patel is still living in Vegas.
Yeah.
With a male roommate.
With his lover? I don't know what the deal is.
We have no idea who he is. It's a male roommate. We know that.
And some sort of timeshare scam guy.
Uh-huh.
As one person I listened to put it, I hope it's a sexual thing.
Yeah,
because if it's not, then
that's the brightest option. That is the brightest option of all of them. Yes. Again from CNN, 56% of respondents disapprove of Trump's economic handling. 42% say the economy is their top issue. More fear Trump's government cuts go too far, 62%, than not far enough, 37%, while 59% call his policies too extreme.
RFK Jr. was out there this week suggesting that getting measles is better than getting vaccinated.
From Crooks and Liars' own John Amato, Donald Trump made sure to insult Irish leader Michael Martin and Ireland during their bilateral meeting at the White House ahead of St. Paddy's Day. Oliver Willis at Daily Kos notes, Martin tried to diplomatically handle the insult as the two men sat in the Oval Office and patiently explained to Trump that trade between the two countries is a two-way street. Martin noted that more than 700 Irish companies have outposts in the U.S. employing thousands of people, Americans, contributing to the domestic economy here in the United States.
And I got to say, Insulting and belittling Ireland and the Irish always works out very well for everyone.
Very well.
Very
yes,
well.
Right.
Trump is now demanding that Canadians be fingerprinted upon entry into this country. The Trump administration is preparing a new travel rule that would require Canadians staying in the U.S. for more than 30 days to register with the U.S. government and to submit to fingerprinting. Show your papers.
And so
please.
all those Republican real estate agents who rent out condos to Canadians in Florida.
Yeah. Kiss it goodbye. Kiss it all goodbye.
Kiss it all goodbye. They're not going to go. This is from sock puppet Senator Genuine Idiot Tommy Tuberville. When it comes to protesters, we got to make sure we treat all of them the same. Send them to jail.
Send all protesters to jail.
All protesters to jail.
Unless they are attacking the U.S. Capitol in a riot to overthrow the government, in which case...
Then don't send them to jail at all.
Throw them a parade and give them everything they want.
They got pardons, Driftglass.
They sure did. They sure did. In local news, speaking of thirsty politicians trying to find that sweet, sweet imaginary center, this is a story from the Free Press. Jailed, pardoned, now Rod Blagojevich, Jesus, he's back, wants to be a Trumpocrat. With a presidential pardon in the bag, the disgraced ex-governor may be eyeing a run for the mayor of Chicago. Oh my good Lord. I'm at the stage of my life that's a new beginning. Blago said he had told Trump he was grateful, but he was pardoning an innocent man. The call ended with Trump asking him, would you be interested in running for office again? And what would you run as, a Democrat or a Republican? I'm a Trumpocrat, the former governor told me, he replied. Well, you should run, Blago recalled Trump saying. You look great, the same as all those years ago. You've got my support. A pardon for an already free man is a mostly symbolic act unless you're a politician. For Blagojevich, it now means that the 68-year-old can run for office again. Though he's barred from running for state office, he could throw his hat in the ring to be mayor of Chicago, or even president of these United States. What's more, not all races require him to declare what seems obvious, that he's no longer a Democrat. If you're running for the mayor of Chicago, you don't have to declare a party, he told me. He added that even in deep blue Chicago, voters, quote, would be open to somebody like me, unquote. Yeah, okay, Rod. Meanwhile, Roger Stone, longtime Trump advisor, is publicly encouraging Blagojevich to run for mayor of Chicago on X. Blago told me that multiple donors, local businessmen, and even a former Chicago politician have all called asking him if he has given running for mayor a thought, unquote. And I bet you I can name a few of the local businessmen and the former Chicago politician who think this is a great idea.
Yeah, I'll bet you can too. Hey, each week we post to our Facebook page and website an internet kitty sent in by you, the listeners. This week's we have 2 internet pets, a cat and a dog, in the same family. Melody is I never know how to say this word. Is it?
Chimera.
Chimera. Thank you. Half and half. Face. Beautiful face. Tortoise shell. Cat. 11 years old. And Elsa the dog is a 10-year-old Cavapoo. In this picture, Melody and Elsa are lying down on the same bed, but I gotta say, Melody the cat does not look too happy about it, and Elsa appears to know her time on the bed is very limited, because it appears to be Melody's bed. And of course, Melody and Elsa eat freshly poured pet food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve Pet Store Perfection or Dollar Store Dreck, your cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria, will sit on the kitchen floor and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured.
Freshly poured, oh my Lord, it's freshly poured.
And you can visit Melody and Elsa at our Patreon page or website. And you can send your internet kitty dog combination, whatever picture you have of your wonderful pets, send it to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can also write to both of us. We love getting pictures of your pets. And please put subject line internet kitty so that I can find them in all of my 1,300 emails I have. Feel free to write to both of us at proleftpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go Postal Unions. bye-bye to joy. Letter on the air unless you say otherwise.
Don't forget our gourmet coffee guidelines. If you don't want us to start booking people like Charlie Kirk on this podcast, damn well better buy us an espresso-based beverage for yourself or buy one for us. Because this is not charity. This is our job. If you can spare $5 a month, please spare $5 a month at patreon.com/proleftpod.
I promise I'm not going to buy a $475 purple skirt from a DC influencer.
No, honey, Mark Hamill follows you now. You are an influencer.
But I'm not an influencer hawking $475 purple skirts.
No, but you are an influencer hawking things on the job because this is our job. And here you are hawking stuff. And your knitting podcast is definitely kicking off. And you have AOC following you. And if anyone wants to buy get the pattern for a Fuck Trump hat, is that available?
Fuck Trump hat is free on Ravelry. And I have a link at my knitting podcast on YouTube. Yes, I do.
It's a full service operation,
for the Fuck
people.
Trump hat, yes.
It's worth $5 a month. Come on, it's worth.
Yes.
Don't make me Charlie. Don't make me go all Gavin Newsom on your ass. It also really does help if you share our show on social media and if you rate us and review us and call us awesome. That makes us feel good. It also tells the algorithm that we should be higher up in the food chain than we are. So if you love this podcast, please get someone else to listen to it. And thank you so much for doing that.
Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties are enjoying what we Midwesterners refer to as false spring, which should be over in 3, 2, 1.
Let's think about living.
Think about living.
Let's think about loving.
Think about loving.
Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2024-25, GGBG Productions.